Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. If you're ready to take on your next paying clients, I have good news. My free 4 Basics of Client Attraction and How to Stand Out class is live at haileyrowe.com/client-attraction. In the class, you're going to learn the top 2 traits I recommend for most coaches and entrepreneurs if they really want to turn this into a career. You're going to learn how you can build demand for your services and stop getting crickets on your posts. You're going to learn the sales roadmap I used to improve my sales conversion rate and help my clients do the same. And you're going to learn so much more. So go to haileyrowe.com/client-attraction and get your copy of the class today. Today, I'm going to be live with a special guest, and we're going to talk about entrepreneurship and what does it really take? What are some realizations we've had as entrepreneurs who started our businesses young? Because the guest that I'm bringing on helps young entrepreneurs specifically. And I got my first coaching certification when I was 16 and got my first little business started in when I was 16. And it was definitely something you want to start early because you learn faster and get a head start. So here we go. And he's coming.
Hey, it's going pretty well.
Hey, John, how are you? Yeah, long time no see. Welcome. And why don't you just start by sharing what you do, who you
So
are,
my name is
and how you
John,
got
for
into
anyone
it.
that doesn't already know. And I'm the host of the Walk 12 podcast. Been doing it a little bit over a year and a month now. Just hit top 5% globally on Listen Notes last month, and it's just coming back from speaking at Podfest Expo about a week and a half ago. So podcast is finally starting to get some traction. Definitely one of those labor of love things. How it came together, though. So I wasn't a born entrepreneur. You mentioned getting into entrepreneurship early. I got into it for me, it was around November, fallish, November-ish of 2020. It was during the pandemic. I was in my sophomore year, and I picked up, 3 books, one of which was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, another was Index Funds for Dummies, and another one was I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And then after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I pretty much had a paradigm shift. And school always came easy to me, but I was never focused on, how to make money. I played sports growing up, so I didn't even have time really to try to do side hustles. I was, football and basketball ate up most of my time, and did track my senior year. And then once I did, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was like, whoa, there's another way of viewing the world out there that wasn't being taught at home, that wasn't being taught at school, that wasn't being taught in my environment. And so it's like, let me just kind of dive a little bit deeper into this. So that winter break, I pretty much, just jumped into the rabbit hole of learning about personal finance and all that, all that jazz. And then I came back that spring semester, and I pretty much I seen the light, and now taking my gen eds classes while, trying to hide the fact that I just learned all this stuff that I never learned before in that 1 month break between spring and fall semester. I was like, man, I can't do this anymore. I seen the light already. So while everything was uncertain, the only thing I was certain of was myself. So I decided to bet on me, and I stopped showing up to my college classes, signed up for a real estate course, and then pretty much long story short, that's how I got into entrepreneurship. And then along the way, one of my friends told me we should start a podcast, and he ended up going back to college. I had already left, but I knew I still wanted to pretty much help people while I'm still on my journey in real time, while also sharing that advice of some of the people that I've been able to come across. And so I was like, this is the perfect medium to do so. Let me just figure it out. And then so I left school, I think it was February 2021. My trailer came out December 2021, and then I officially debuted my podcast in January.
Nice. That is awesome. And I am somebody who actually got my bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship, which is actually fun. A lot of times people are like, oh, you never use your college degree. And I feel like it was one of those things where I actually did. But I also feel, and I feel you on this, that learning from podcasts, learning from courses, learning from YouTube, you can actually learn more than you can at college. So when you know what you're looking for and you know the right mentors to listen to, I mean, it's that we live in this time. So tell everybody, like, what do you offer? Like, what is your business? And then we'll talk about kind of some of the mistakes or realizations in starting it.
I thought the podcast was going to be something. So I had shiny object syndrome all of 2022. I was trying to do, so I'm a licensed realtor still. I was trying to do the podcast. I started up a SMMA, and I still worked at a restaurant. So I was trying to figure out this entrepreneurship thing. And for me, my issue was there was different opportunity phone lines ringing at the same time. And instead of picking one up and going, I tried to pick up all four at the same exact time and have a conversation with everyone. And that did not work out in my favor at all. And so I pretty much had to decide, well, everything is crumbling in front of me. All my plans that I, envisioned for myself wasn't playing out. Like this time last year, I thought I was going to be realtor of the year, selling houses left and right. I was like, you know what? I can't do any of this at the same time. Like I could do it all, just not just with me wearing all the hats. It's impossible. Then don't let any entrepreneur video tell you otherwise. You cannot do it all on your own. It is extremely hard to even get one thing off the ground on your own, right? And so I was trying to do all four. And it was around November or December-ish. I really started thinking about, what it is that I really want to focus on. And so I ended up deciding, like, my message is more important than a commission check, than creating content for somebody, than, anything. So I was like, I'm just going to double down on the podcast. And so for where I'm at right now, is my main goal for this year really is on building my audience and leveraging that to get into the speaking realm. And my goal is, I'm planning a virtual summit for March. That's kind of along the same theme of the podcast right now. And then I have a course coming out. And my goal is to really use those two things, start building out my list, to start growing my show, because as my show grows, then that'll allow me opportunities to monetize in ways that I don't see now. And instead of trying to create that product or service, I'm just focusing right now on building my audience and building my authority, and then having the community tell me what they want so that I can just create whatever they want. And it's always going to be a hit because I'm creating what they need, instead of trying to do what I did before and say, let me see something and see if it lands. I'm going to focus on building the audience, cultivating the audience. And then once the audience says they need X, Y, Z, here you go. This is my thing. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. And using the virtual summit, that's going to, create some money here and there. The social media marketing agency, I scrapped the idea because I didn't want to create content for other people, but I love the idea of teaching. So as I said, I have a course coming out with that. I'm partnering up with this one company that has a pretty big email list. And so I contribute to the thing, and they have like a bundle. People pay for the bundle and they get access to everything. So I'm going to leverage that to build my list. And as I said, really just focusing on growing the audience, growing the email list, growing my authority. And then I paid for an accelerator not too long ago, and that's going to help me land my first TED Talk within the next 60 to 90 days. So I have this kind of storm brewing to really just boost my authority and boost my audience, my listenership. And then from there, I'll decide, because this whole thing kind of didn't play out how I planned. And so it's like, okay, back to the drawing board. And like, I'm documenting that in real time for anyone that checks out the podcast. Like, I'm literally just documenting that in real time. Like, hey, here's where I'm at. Here's what I originally thought was going to happen. Here's what I'm going through. Here's what I'm trying to figure out, kind of. And so that's where I'm at currently.
Love it. Yeah, there are so many little tidbits in there that I think we all can relate to. And one of them is when you focus, what you focus on, or where your energy goes, abundance. For me, I used to have, kind of like you, I was working in business development and marketing for a startup. I was training some people at a gym. I was like subbing classes. I was singing in a wedding band. I was trying to coach. And I noticed myself just feeling like I am so tired and I can't give my all to anything because I'm like spread thin. And so I ended up just like tailoring it in and really focusing on coaching and just subbing for singing and all that. And it caused me to have the best years in my business because you were just able to focus. So I think that is a real moment you have to have with yourself that takes courage to let go of other things to make room for something that you can't see the whole staircase for. And I think too, like what you're doing right now to build your audience and put out a podcast and to start sharing your journey and documenting your journey, that's such a key thing that everyone here should be thinking about, because it all starts with building your audience. Your message is allowed to evolve, but so many people wait to even get started, and the part that takes kind of the longest, which is building like awareness about what you even like, that you exist, and leads, and building up your email list. And so I think it's really important to of course, like, be intentional. And if you know, if you think you're going to change your message every 2 weeks at the stage you're at, because you're in like a huge self-discovery phase, then okay, maybe put it on pause. But for most people, they kind of, you probably know your talents and like long term what you like and kind of where this would be going, and that you're looking to attract entrepreneurs and that you're looking to attract a certain type of person and whatever. So it makes a lot of sense that you would start without needing to see the whole staircase. And if anybody here is listening and you're thinking like, entrepreneurship, if I, I need to see all 30 steps in front of me first before I get started, you are never going to get started. So for anybody listening, like, how did you get over that hump of like, I can't see it all yet and how it's going to work out, but I just need to start taking action and I need to start building my email list?
So I think this
how'd you get
skill
over
that I
that?
picked up in high school and middle school played into a big role of what I'm doing now. And I didn't really put two and two together until later on. But pretty much in high school and middle school, whenever we took multiple choice tests, my first instinct wasn't to look for the right answer. It was to cross out what's wrong, right? It's just, which ones can I eliminate as soon as possible so that I have less choices? And so, like, for me, at that point in time, there was a lot of different things, because I jumped into that personal finance rabbit hole. So I was listening to things on, how to build credit, how to invest in index funds, how to get into real estate, no money or credit needed, all these different things were kind of just being thrown into me. And it wasn't until real estate, for whatever reason, I felt a little bit more drawn to, just the investment side of things a little bit. And so that's kind of where I started. But the best thing to do is to just try things so you can cross them off. And it wasn't, I wish I had known this sooner, but there's this concept I found out called Ikigai, and it pretty much stands for your reason for being. And for anyone that's listening and doesn't know, or that's going to listen in the future to the replay, pretty much Ikigai is the intersection of what you love to do. Like, what would you do if no one paid you ever in your life? Then what the world needs, list out everything you can feel compelled to solve, and then what you can be rewarded for, because a lot of times charity and volunteer work isn't going to keep the lights on or put food on the table. And then what are you good at? Or when I'm talking to a younger crowd, what do you have the aptitude to be good at? Because a lot of times there's a saying, the fish is always the last one to realize it's in water. So like, some of the skills that we can, so like for the social media marketing thing, I was in a real estate mastermind. They pretty much go on Clubhouse every 6:30 to 7 a.m. Monday through Friday. I'm in the gym at that time normally. So I never ever share, but I'm always listening. And one day we're going to talk about social media. And I know a thing or two just from growing up with it socially, and growing up just having that be a big part of my life growing up. And so I made a couple quick tips, and this is before I started doing any Instagram marketing or reels or anything like that. This is long before that. And I just made that quick post, and the host was like, John, we would like you to teach a class on this. And I was like, I never taught a class before. She was like, John, when do you want it scheduled? And I was like, I can't say no twice. I can't fumble the opportunity twice. So I ended up teaching a class. Long story short, what I thought was something that was just normal or regular to me was something that people found extremely valuable. And so that first class ended up getting almost 440 signups for that first class. I probably spent more time figuring out how to use MailChimp to send out the invites than I actually did just preparing for the class, just because I never taught a class before. So it's like, if I were to just spend some time a little bit earlier on, just like listing out like, what are some potentials? It's like, that way it limits the decision, because you could start anywhere in entrepreneurship. But like, if I would have learned about Ikigai or like exercises similar to that, it would have narrowed down my focus a bit. And then from there, knowing that, it's time delayed just compounds problems. So if you're going to keep sitting on the fence, it's the problem's going to eventually just get longer and, bigger and bigger. The list just get longer and longer. And so it's like, just get out there and just start crossing things off, kind of like the multiple choice testing I said earlier. And then eventually, when it's kind of, comes down to it, do you want to pick A or B? or do you want to pick A, B, C, D, E? And for me, I was like, let me just start crossing things off. And I eventually came to the podcast, but it took me a while. A lot of, shiny object syndrome and a lot of squirrels that I was chasing along the way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you probably naturally, I mean, you learned it in high school, but both, I feel like we're the same personality type.
Yeah.
There's like a quick starter thing in us. And to make a decision, they have to really like sit with it. They have to really ponder. They have to really, and I think it's not necessarily like everybody has a different style, and that's okay. And it can be like I was just learning about human design and how some people are more like the attractors, while others are like the go-getters, like go out and get their attraction. Like so. I think it's interesting to where you said finding your strengths and with the I think it's called what was it called, like combining like what am I good at, what do I love, what do I want to be remembered for, what's marketable, and that balance is really important. And if you're somebody who takes a long time to make decisions, I think it's important to start to give yourself criteria or a filter you run things through, or a deadline process or something, because otherwise entrepreneurship is going to be real hard because you're never going to get anything done. So what would you say was a big, like, I guess, mistake or, and sorry, I keep moving around. There's the sun like deciding to come and go as it pleases. So what would you say was a big aha moment or maybe mistake you made on the journey aside from the shiny object?
Quick little thing on the topic that you were just on. Like action-oriented people keep the world going, and then thinking oriented people keep the world safe, right? Because without the action takers, this world, everyone would just be at a standstill. But without the thinkers, the action people would just fall off cliffs, right? So it's like it's a healthy medium that we have to kind of keep between the two. It's like the yin and the yang kind of. So it's like if you're more thought oriented, just find someone that's action oriented and partner up with them, because they'll take all the action on everything, and you could kind of like help, like, hey, let me reel you back in because you're going too far into the deep end. And then for the people who are action oriented, like sleep on the decision, because we can get ourselves an opportunity. And there's a lot of great opportunities, but not every opportunity is a great opportunity for us. Like I could have very much well been a very successful realtor. I could have been the top agent very easily, not very easily, but relatively easily, right? But it's like, well, that opportunity was a great opportunity, just not for me, and with the message that I felt that I'm called to, bring out into this world. So that's why I went the podcasting route. And so for anyone that I guess, remind me again, I get lost in tangents. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. That's a good point. I was just saying that any mistakes or big realizations.
My biggest mistake is, or really my biggest aha is that procrastination, when used correctly, is your biggest friend. Procrastination is a very good thing because it's a symbol. It's a sign. And you have to interpret the sign properly. That's the catch, though. And a lot of the times you may be procrastinating, maybe because it's hard, maybe because it's difficult. You don't like challenging yourself. You don't like putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation. But sometimes you may be procrastinating because you're not in alignment with what you're truly meant to do. And that was my issue. So I was trying to become a top realtor. I said, I tried to start the SMMA, and like, I was so convinced that this was going to be the one. And then I, like real estate, I read this book called The Purpose Factor. And I read that book, and then I was like, okay, maybe real estate isn't a thing. Because at that point, it's September now of 2022. I already been licensed almost a year now, and I still, at that point, I only closed 3 rental deals. I wasn't having any traction. The leads I would have would fall through the crack. I wasn't following up. And I was like, okay, I'm not doing what I got to do despite me knowing what I need to do. All right, let me try and get into the social media thing. And so I tried that. And after my first client, I was like, I really don't like creating content for other people. I already have to do it for myself. And so I was just procrastinating on that. And then it was like, despite all that, I was still consistently dropping weekly episodes, right? Without fail. Every week, I didn't miss for the most part since like March or so. I was dropping weekly episodes without fail. And what I had to realize was maybe I was procrastinating in real estate and with the social media stuff, because the podcasting was what I was meant to do the entire time. And had I found it out sooner, but my ego is so convinced because I'm I like to get myself into things. I like to achieve. I like to succeed. I was one of those kids, for a little bit of context, in high school gym, where it's like, if you're on my team, this is the finals, and if you lose, we lose because of you, like, you need to be exiled. Like, that's how seriously I took high school gym. Like, whatever I put myself into, I would just like kind of just like, really go in at it. And sometimes it's like, well, maybe if I would have just came to the realization sooner that, hey, it's okay to pivot. But I was so convinced that my identity was going to be a top real estate agent that I wasn't willing to let go. And so I was just kind of in limbo for a little while, not making any progress, but I was moving in circles, making it, I thought I was making progress because I was moving. I wasn't moving forward though. And then it wasn't until around November where I really started thinking like, hey, what on earth is going on? I have all these traits to be successful. I have all these traits that people admire. People, that are older than me are saying like, John, you're doing great. And it's like, and behind the scenes, it's like nothing is going my way. So after thinking and spending some time with myself, I'm just like, put my ego to the side, put what I had originally planned to the side, and go this route and be okay with that, and be okay with where the journey was taking me, because that's what felt right most at the moment, and not trying to be, not trying to resist so much as to where I was being guided.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, if looking back on my journey too, if I would have known, there was so many so I used to do more done for you services than I do now. Now I do literally two main offers: coaching, which, yeah, there's some branches under that. Like, I have a group program, private coaching course, but then the other thing is LinkedIn lead gen, and that's the only done for you service I do, and that's it. And but before that happened, before I got that refinement, before I had the systems in place to keep running those, and like the way that it's gotten to be now where it's so smooth, there was a million iterations. There was like, I had a business partner for a while and we did done for you services, and we were like, we hate this. Like, what are we doing? We're still like really good friends. He has a TEDx talk, by the way. So if you want to talk to him, let me know. Great guy. But anyways, we were like, why are we like, we're killing our geniuses. Like, we gotta stop doing this. So, we did that for a while. And then there were like little iterations. And if somebody said, hey, you're going to have to do 10, 12,000 steps before you get to the point that you're at, in the beginning, when I was like, I don't know, I would still do it, because I know, like, at the end of the day, this is just what I wanted to do, and I'm going to figure it out. But when you have the mindset, and I think something that I picked up on that you have is like, you have that mindset where you're like, whatever it takes, I'm just going to figure this out. But if somebody said to you, or I think where some people's mindset is like, I'll take the steps, but I want to know how many. I want to do it only if I feel like it. I want to do it only if it's comfortable and I don't have to put myself out there. Like, and there's all these conditions, and it's not a bad, I'm not saying, you have to have values, and you have to have like, here's what I am and here's what I'm not, and here's what I do and here's what I don't do. But if you have like a million lists of conditions that stop you, or even with what you're saying with the procrastination, like, you finally slowed down enough to let yourself see that wasn't the steps you should be taking. I just think you have to go in with the first mindset we talked about, where it's like, hey, it might be 12,000 steps, and you might become a realtor along the way, and you might detour to that and whatever. And that's just part of it. It's just part of the whole process. So rather than seeing it as a waste, or like, I wasted time, or I went off course, or I failed, or whatever, I see it as just like, that was supposed to happen that way, and part of the whole unfolding of all of it. How did you, is there anything, I guess, since we're coming towards the end here, is there anything you would tell an entrepreneur who feels really overwhelmed, or just is kind of in that place where they feel like they detoured, or they got distracted or something?
One of the things that made my social media classes such a hit is that all my marketing stuff that I learned were from guys like Russell Brunson, a social media influencer, like Modern Millie, social media marketing queen, another chick that I follow, Brock 11 Johnson, another guy that I follow on social media marketing. Like, all those people. And then in the marketing world, I said Russell Brunson and Dan Kennedy, some other big marketing guys. It's like, so when I brought that into, like, I just added for realtors to the end of my class, all this information was like, you know, it's so new to them that it was like I just taught a Chat GPT course, webinar, literally like 2 or 3 weeks ago from the time we're recording this. And so that class, I had like over 300 agents sign up, and they never heard of, you know, anything AI. And so it's like I was blowing them away. So it's good to have, you know, your journey take twists and turns, because it gives you new perspectives from new places that you would never learn. It's like one thing that being a realtor taught me is like with Keller Williams, they're such a business oriented company. I learned so many good principles and values from just being at Keller Williams, and like the teachings and the trainings that they have. It's a lot of them apply to just life in general, not just, you know, sticking a sign in the yard and saying for sale, right? So it's like I was able to learn a lot and learn the power of community. I was, you know, fortunate to find that mastermind, and it's like the people in there. Like although I'm not focused on selling houses anymore, it's like I'm still in, you know, a lot of those calls, just because the people are there are such like good people and such supportive people that I'm still always in them. And so and that's one of the things for anyone that feels like they're taking too many twists and turns, like see what you can learn from all this stuff. Wherever the journey is taking you, see where you can learn. And for anyone that feels overwhelmed, you either are doing too much, you're either spreading yourself too thin, or you're not in alignment. Because I could be half dead and I got a podcast interview in 5 minutes. I promise you, you know, 3 minutes into that conversation, I'm up and having the best time of my life, because I enjoy genuinely from the bottom of my heart speaking to people. And when you're in alignment with what you're truly called to be doing, I feel like there's another level, another source you could tap into. I feel that you normally wouldn't be able to. That's why I would say, you know, people that have kids, if their kid was crying and, you know, they get superhuman strength, right, to help them get to where their kids are. It's like our bodies aren't operating at what the full capacity. So it's like there's always different gears we can kick into. But when you're doing it for a job you hate, or something that doesn't really motivate you or inspire you or fulfill you, it's harder to kick into those other gears unless you have just some insane amount of mental discipline and you're like David Goggins or something like that. But for the most part, it's just like just having something that fulfills you just makes it easier to tap into that next gear.
Yeah, 100%. I heard a quote that's if you are tired, it might not be that you're doing much, it might be you're doing too little of what lights you up. And I was like, because I used to work at the startups and I loved that. And but I was working a ton. But there's been other times where I was working on a project or something, I was exhausted, and I was feeling like I was barely doing anything. It's just the work itself was like, this is not my jam. But anyways, where can people find you, connect with you, all that
Mendez
stuff?
Official, that'll be the best place to connect with me. And if you want to learn more about the podcast, if you want to check out Hailey's episode, that's going to be dropping, if I'm not mistaken, sometime next month. So go check out Walk to Wealth on IG, on all the social media platforms, the website and everything. And there you learn about, you know, the entrepreneur side of things, personal finance, building a wealthy, abundant life. And thanks again, Hailey, for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Walk to Wealth podcast. Awesome. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.